Zach Sodenstern, Los Angeles 1962 to Los Angeles 2021. A highly successful science fiction writer, Zach Sodenstern was the creator of the Gunther O'Connell saga, of the Fourth Reich saga, and of the saga of Gunther O'Connell and the Fourth Reich, in which the previous two sagas fuse into one, Gunther O'Connell, the West Coast gangster turned politician, having successfully infiltrated the underworld of the Fourth Reich in the Midwest. The first and second sagas comprise more than 10 novels, while the third is made up of 3, one of them unfinished. Some of the stories are particularly worthy of note. A Little House in Napa, the beginning of the Gunther O'Connell saga, is set in a world of extreme violence perpetrated by children and teenagers, described in a restrained manner, without spelling out moral lessons or suggesting any solutions to the problems. The novel appears to be a mere succession of unpleasant situations and acts of aggression, interrupted only by the words, "the end." At first glance, it does not seem to be a work of science fiction. Only the dreams or visions of the adolescent Gunther O'Connell give it a certain prophetic, fantastic coloring. No space voyages, robots, or scientific advances figure in its pages. On the contrary, the society it describes seems to have regressed to an inferior degree of civilization. Candace, 1990, is the second installment of the Gunther O'Connell saga. The adolescent protagonist has become a 25-year-old determined to change his life and the lives of others. The novel recounts the ins and outs of his job as a construction worker and his love for a slightly older woman called Candace, who is married to a corrupt policeman. The opening pages introduce the reader to O'Connell's dog, a mutant stray German shepherd with telepathic powers and Nazi tendencies. In the last 50 pages, it becomes clear that a major earthquake has occurred in California and that the United States government has been toppled by a coup. Revolution and the Crystal Cathedral are the third and fourth installments of the saga. Revolution consists basically of dialogue between O'Connell and his dog Flip, plus various secondary episodes of extreme violence set in a ruined Los Angeles. The Crystal Cathedral is a story about God, fundamentalist preachers, and the ultimate meaning of life. Sodenstern portrays O'Connell as a calm but withdrawn man who carries the skull of his great lost love Candace, killed by her husband in the second novel of the cycle, in a little bag permanently attached to his belt. He nostalgically remembers various old TV series in suspiciously accurate detail, and is friend to no one but his dog, who has taken on an increasingly important role. Flip's adventures and reflections constitute sub-novels within the novel. The Cephalopods and Warriors of the South cap off the O'Connell saga. The Cephalopods records O'Connell's trip to San Francisco with Flip and their adventures in that city where gays and lesbians rule supreme. Warriors of the South relates the clash between earthquake survivors in California and millions of hungry Mexicans marching northward en masse, devouring everything in their path. The situation is reminiscent at times of the conflict between Romans and barbarians on the fringes of the empire. Checking the maps opens the Fourth Reich saga. It is full of appendices, maps, incomprehensible indices of proper names, and solicits an interaction in which no sensible reader would persist. The events take place mainly in Denver and Midwestern cities. There is no main character. The less chaotic stretches read like collections of stories haphazardly tacked together. Our Friend B and The Ruins of Pueblo continue in the same vein. The characters are designated by letters or numbers, and the texts are not so much scrambled puzzles as fragments of scrambled puzzles. Although presented and sold as a novel, The Fourth Reich in Denver is in fact a reader's guide to the 3 preceding titles. The Simbas, the last installment before the confluence of the Fourth Reich and O'Connell sagas, a surreptitious manifesto directed against African Americans, Jews, and Hispanics, gave rise to diverse and contradictory interpretations. Sodenstern was a cult author, and several of his novels had been adapted for the screen by the time he came to publish the last 3, which recounts Gunther O'Connell's initiatory voyage toward the central territories of the American continents and his subsequent encounter with the mysterious leaders of the Fourth Reich. In The Bat Gangsters, O'Connell and Flip cross the Rockies. In Anita, an aging O'Connell rediscovers love with a teenage replica of his old girlfriend Candace. The plot is a simple transposition of Sodenstern's situation at the time. He was besotted, like a teenager, with a young UCLA student. And in A, O'Connell finally penetrates to the heart of the Fourth Reich, of which he is elected leader. According to Sodenstern's plans, the saga of O'Connell and the Fourth Reich was to comprise 5 novels. Of the final 2, only rough outlines and indecipherable lists have survived. The fourth, to be entitled The Arrival, would have narrated a long vigil, O'Connell, Flip, Anita, and the members of the Fourth Reich awaiting the birth of a new Messiah. The final untitled novel would probably have explored the consequences of the Messiah's coming. In a file on his computer, Sodenstern noted that the Messiah could be Flip's son, but there is nothing to suggest that this was more than verbal doodling.